Shulam Brocha, Parshas Beshalach, Shabbos Shira. Let's learn a bit of this magnificent Parsha. At the moment, news in the world is monopolized by stories about international borders, quarantine. Eretz Yisrael you can't even get into any longer because of the COVID. Britain is thinking about it. Britain voted about Brexit, and there's this also all about borders. And the American president has taken his first moments in office to scroll his name on an executive order, changing his predecessor's border laws. As COVID creeps further around the world, many countries are closing their borders so as to isolate their citizens, and so borders are meant to be sacred. Porous borders make for problems. Now, back in its day, Mitzrayim had almost impregnable borders. Chazal tell us that no slave had ever escaped over those borders. So how was it that an entire nation, our ancestors, just marched out in broad daylight? So there's a word from the Heilige Ishbitzer Rebbe, Mordechai Yosef. He shares an insight. He explains that the borders were not demarcated with high walls or locks. In fact, it wasn't necessary. Life in Mitzrayim was the center of materialism and immorality. There wasn't anything that couldn't be had in that cesspool of schmutz, of filth. And the whole world sought to live and to visit there. They had no need for fortifications. Even the slaves chose to live there. The life experience of the lowest of the slaves was perceived to be better than anywhere else in the world. This was the mystique of Egypt, of Mitzrayim. So what happened to the Yidden? Why did they break the mold and march out? The answer is Parshas. They were given the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. The first mitzvah introduced a new sweetness, something beyond all material trinkets that the Golus of Mitzrayim offered. So the Rebbe elaborates. He says, when the Yidden were blessed to be able to bring this first sacrifice, it was the first time that they had a taste of true freedom, accepting the Hashem's rule far exceeded anything they could have ever experienced beforehand. So the Rebbe explains that further than that, the taste of Torah and mitzvahs raises one above all the material and all the whims and all the whimsicals and the crassness, and gives us a sense of joy and spirituality that exceeds everything of the material world. So today's borders, they loom very high. And people are agitated. In truth, we're swamped in an ocean of spiritual foulness, and the instantaneous information flow of nothingness, and especially now the anger that people have with all that's going on with the Golus COVID, as I call it. So countries are scrambling about, trying to hold on to their own identity. But in reality, the borders are futile when everyone carries the whole world in their hands in a telephone. Technology doesn't have borders. And fighting over yesterday's maps is like chasing Mercury. In Parshas Beshalach, we learn how the Yidden were faced with a natural border, the sea. They witnessed yet another miracle and walked through the seabed that had turned to dry land. Upon reaching the other side and seeing the destruction that was wrought upon the masters, the erstwhile masters, the Egyptians, they break out in song. This shira, this song, has become part of our daily avodah, our daily prayers. And it lends its name to this Shabbos. Shabbos, shira, the Shabbos of the song. The Beis Aaron writes about the great reward that one can earn by just saying, Oz your shir. He writes, the shira contains everything that happened in the past, and everything that will happen in the future, and everything that person needs. All of this is in the shira. Towards its conclusion, what do we say at the end of the shira? When Paro's horse came with his chariots, and the horsemen into the sea, and Hashem turned back the waters of the sea upon them, the children of Israel walked on dry land amid the sea. Tochayam. The Eden stood on dry land, surrounded by the turbulence of the sea. Currently, Klal Yisrael, we are also never submerged in the Golis, in the ocean of today's crassness, and we're getting wake-up calls. We're trying, but we're finding things so difficult. But we have a taste of mitzvahs. We do have mitzvahs. And this mitzvahs, this illumination allows us to rise above what's going on. Torah Yidden, throughout history, have clung to the shira and tasted the sweetness of Torah life. Despite everything, we sang the song of the Yidden's freedom and connected with Kavayuchel the Eibishter. That sweetness, derived from adherence to Hashem's Torah and mitzvahs and ayin tov, a good eye for each other, this is what keeps us going, allowing us to walk on dry land despite the turbulences around us. Our young, some of whom seem to be floundering, they might have attended the right schools and davened in the right shuls, but just maybe, they never tasted the sweetness of the Torah and the mitzvahs. It's just possible that despite all our efforts, the simcha of Torah passed it by. Why? Every neshama is different. Every soul is different. There is no black and white answers to these questions. However, the simchas hachayim of the Torah life is there for every neshama. The Rebbe Reb Tzudek Kohen from Lublin, he teaches us that in addition to believing in Hashem, one must believe in himself. One has to believe that Hashem is interested in him and that he was created for a purpose. Instilling this realization into the young is not a simple matter, but it goes to the kernel of our existence as Yidden. Society doesn't believe in any of that. But we Jews, we have the secret, because this is who we are. We saw it at the Shira. We saw it at the Yam Suf. We have to believe in ourselves that Hashem cares about us. Every neshama deserves to know this and to feel the taste of the mitzvahs. To stand on dry land despite the storms, despite the fighting, besides all what's going on, the darkness. Simchas Chaim is vital. Otherwise, the kids will just go out looking for stuff that's not real. Our young deserve the inner joy of mitzvahs. It is the only way forward for them. How does this happen? How do we do it? By ourselves being connected and showing the next generation what it means to live with joy. Broken and depressed youngsters don't believe Hashem cares. They're mired in the coldness that surrounds them. So we have to find the point of entry into their hearts and fill it with true happiness. The true happiness of doing mitzvahs, of being connected, of sharing. This will raise them above the grasp of today's Mitzrayim and allow them to join in the singing of our nation's Shira.